So today we're going to be talking about sources. I'm going to have two videos for you, one about different kinds of sources and one about where to find sources. So the first thing that we're talking about this morning is different kinds of sources. And for our purposes here today, I'm going to talk about two different kinds of sources. Those are scholarly sources and popular sources. So scholarly sources are primarily academic journals, academic books, scholarly or journals or books is another way to say that. Some websites, but that's rarely true. Popular sources are most often newspapers, magazines, some books, and most websites. Not all websites are good sources, of course. Not all of any of these things are good sources, but that would fall under the term popular websites. So the primary differences between these two types of sources that I want to talk to you about today are who the audience is, who the authors are, what the purpose of publication is, publication criteria, and sources. And to get more information about this, I am going to take you to a website that has um, good information on it about how to find or how to distinguish the differences between these things. So here we are. This is on a website at the University of St. Mary's. And we are looking at a chart that was made here in order to distinguish between scholarly journals and popular magazines. So the chart starts with who the audience is. We've talked about audience a lot all semester, so this should be familiar to you. So, the audience for a scholarly journal is scholarly readers, such as professors, researchers, and students, that means you, familiar with the language of the field. Popular magazines, on the other hand, have as their audience the general population, so people with a non technical background. So where scholarly journals are specifically thinking about people who are interested in researching and learning in a specific field, a popular magazine is designed for a very broad audience of people. The purpose of a scholarly journal and a popular magazine is also different. So, the purpose of a scholarly journal is to make original research available to the scholarly world. The purpose of a popular magazine is to provide general information that is either informative or entertaining. The difference between who the author is also significant for these two sources. So, a scholarly journal article will be written by experts in the field, and their credentials will be identified. And their credentials being information about who they are and why they're experts in the field. So, where they got their PhD from, um, or where they're in graduate school in some cases, or other information that would identify them as an expert. In popular magazines, the authors of articles are typically staff or freelance writers and very occasionally scholarly writers as well. But the reality of a popular magazine is that almost anybody can write an article that gets published in it. Whereas in a scholarly journal, only experts are published there. So, another important distinction between scholarly journals and popular magazines is the sources that are used. So, in a scholarly journal, there will always be a bibliography of some kind that shows the cited sources documenting the research. Typically, you're going to see footnotes or endnotes that give you information about this. And then there's also going to be a list of references that you can use to find those same sources and do the research on your own. For popular magazines, typically there's not a bibliography. The names of reports or references might be mentioned in the text, but that's not even always true. So, popular sources, like popular magazines, do often have research involved in what they're doing, but typically they don't have a bibliography that makes it easy for you to follow up on that research. Publication criteria is another difference between a scholarly journal and a popular magazine. So, scholarly journals require that any article published in it be peer reviewed or refereed. And what that means is that a scholar writes an article, they send it into a journal to be published, and then the journal's editor takes the article that they've read and sends it out to other experts in the field who can read that article and determine if what's been written in it is valid, is true, is useful, is interesting enough to be published in the journal. So anytime that a scholarly journal article is published, that means that other scholars have reviewed it and determined that the information in it is good and worth being published. In popular magazines, there's typically not a specific criteria for publication. So if the editor likes the article, it gets published. If not, maybe not. Okay, and so then format, there's a difference in format and appearance. These are a little bit less important for our purposes here, so we're going to move on. Okay, but keep in mind that the key differences are who is the audience, who is the author, what is the purpose, is the article peer reviewed or not, and what are the sources that are used? Do you have a bibliography? Okay, so it's a little bit easy to tell the difference between a scholarly journal or a popular magazine, partially because scholarly journals always look pretty boring and you can't find them typically on magazine newsstands or anything like that. You have to be a subscriber to get a scholarly journal. But if you look at a popular magazine, you know what that looks like. You've seen them a million times, you've read them. That's easy to distinguish. However, it's not always as easy to distinguish books. Okay, books can also be a popular source or a scholarly source. So I'm going to show you the difference by looking at two books that have a similar topic. One is a popular source and one is a scholarly source.